one the size of a wagon wheel.
You are now live streaming.
Right, and I think it's about time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Higham Ferrers Town Council Policy and Resources Committee. The first item on the agenda are apologies.
I've got apologies from Councillor Barry Prigmore, and Councillor Gardner is substituting.
Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Gardner, for substituting. Item 2 on the agenda is declarations of interest. To receive declarations of interest, disclosable pecuniary interests or other interests, and the nature of those interests relating to items on the agenda. Has anybody got anything that they wish to declare? Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda are minutes. To approve and sign as a correct record the minutes of the meeting of the Policy and Resources Committee held on the 11th of August 2020. It's on pages 1 to page 3 in your agenda pack. Has everybody had a chance to look through the minutes?
Yes.
Can I move that be signed, Madam Chair?
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please?
Seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. And all those in favour, will you please show hands? Right, thank you. I shall sign those. I shall bring them up to the office tomorrow, Alicia.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Item 4 on the agenda is public forum. To allow any member of the public to address the meeting for a period of no longer than 3 minutes each. Have we got any member of the public wishing to speak, Sandra?
No.
Thank you. Item 5 on the agenda is review of policies. To review the following policies, which are on page 4 in your agenda. There's 5.1 complaints, 5.2 unreasonable compliant behaviour. Complainant behaviour, 5.3 investment strategy, 5.4 social media policy, 5.5 whistleblowing policy, and 5.6 tree management policy. All of them have no changes required. So could we take them en bloc, please? Would somebody propose that we take those? Thank you, Bert. Could somebody second it, please? Councillor Thomas, thank you. And all those in favour, will you please show hands? Oh, thank you. Thank you, Vijay. Caught it. Right, and item 6 on the agenda is the business forward plan. To receive an update on progress with projects and works detailed in the business forward plan. So on pages 5 to pages 8 on your agenda pack. Has anybody got any comments that they'd like to make on this? Or Sandra, would you like to speak about anything?
I think everything's got a summary. All the ongoing projects have got a summary there. I have added in now the review of the community plan, the neighbourhood plan, and the community room as projects that are going to start now or go into the future. The only one comment, I have got to start looking at the toilet refurbishment. When I did have somebody out last year, they did talk about possibly making the toilets so you access a cubicle straight from the high street. So you probably have 2 cubicles, and then you've actually got quite a big building, and then you could actually have part of the building converted into a room which the park rangers could use for storage, going to wash their hands, that sort of thing. So I might sort of come back with something scoped in that way to start off with, because interestingly, when I was away, I did actually see some toilets at the coast which actually got a contactless payment machine on the door to get in rather than coins. So I mean, obviously we've got, I mean, the toilets are quite roomy. I mean, you've got 1 cubicle in the ladies and a great big space that's not used, and it's more for us to clean. So if we had 2 just individual cubicles, that may well be enough.
Yeah,
as long as you've got the disabled access. And it might be a way of just providing a bit more space for us for storage. Is my thought.
right, thank
Yes.
you. Has anybody else got any comments they'd like to make on the business forward plan? Right, thank you. Can I have somebody propose that we receive that update, please? Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Could I have a seconder, please? And thank you, Councillor Whiting. And all those in favour, will you please show hands? Right, thank you, everybody. Right, item 7 on the agenda is to consider report on options for taking card payments, which is on pages 9 and 10 in your agenda pack. Sandra, would you like to talk about this?
Yeah, obviously this was first discussed at the last meeting. I have gone away and got some examples of the charges that have been taken from to do with dealing with credits over the last year. I mean, the options are, I mean, I don't think we'd end up paying a massive amount more in terms of charging by having a card facility, but I actually just think going forward, especially when we get back to face-to-face contact, it actually is providing a better service for the community. And it's much easier for us to, for example, if somebody gives the deposit for the tennis court, for us to give a refund in that way. Whereas now it actually takes a bit of time because we then have to process an online payment, get 2 councillors to release it. And I think in terms of processing cash, it's not just about taking the cash in and paying it into the bank account. You've got to think we have to go to the post office. So that's a member of staff's time. If there's a queue, you could be out the office for 20 minutes. That's another cost factor to factor in. If you've got a card, it's just done
Yes.
within minutes. So it is more efficient as well. And I think iZettle seems to be the most popular one. And I mean, for an outlay of £29, I think it is currently, they do vary for the machine. The only time you then get charged is when you actually use it.
Okay. Councillor Gardner, you'd like to say something?
Yes, please. Yeah, I'd like to just reiterate Sandra's thoughts there on the machine Zettle there. But really, it just seems such a sensible way to go, not only on a COVID level, but on a security level as well. But I think it would provide a better service. Our community is more than used to it. It's being asked in most places that we go, and it's part of the community norm now. It just seems a very sensible way forward and forward thinking, and I propose we go ahead with it. Really, I don't see a reason not to. I think looking forward, you know, it's needed.
Thank you. Has anybody else got a comment they'd like to make? No. So, Councillor Gardner, that was the proposal that we go forward with it?
Yes, please.
Right. Would somebody like to second that? Councillor Jackson. All those in favour, will you please show hands? Right. Thank you. That's unanimous. Right. Item 8 on the agenda is the waste disposal. 8.1, to agree to an upgrade to the higher tier waste carriers licence to allow park wardens to transport general waste, which is on page 11 in your agenda pack. Sandra, would you like to make some comment about this?
I mean, you may recall there was some discussion at the last meeting and we agreed to pay for the one for the green waste carrier licence.
Yes.
We've now brought this back to go to the higher tier. For example, we've had some waste dumped at Bailey Court. We can't actually technically we can't transport that because we're actually breaching licensing rules on that. And it is, if you look over 3 years, you're talking about just over £50 per year. So it's not extortionate.
Yeah.
And going forward, you know, even at Sparkle, really, in hindsight, we perhaps should have had it because of when they transport waste up and down the high street to the skip.
Yes. Yeah, we should have had it anyway. Right. So,
Yeah.
Councillor Jackson.
If you remember, this is what I was saying the last time. I said we were expecting our park wardens to break the law because previously, it was some years ago, obviously, I myself had a waste carriers. And I know that their definition of waste is a lot more stringent than what a lot of people think. If you've got a few pieces of hardcore in there, you consider it's hardcore, they consider it's waste. And therefore you can, if you haven't got a waste carrier's license, you can have a fine imposed. So we were expecting our park wardens to break the law. So I can't see why we didn't do it. And it didn't cost us anything. The first initial one was free, so it's just paperwork that's waste. We've got to go ahead with it.
Right, thank you. Councillor Gardner.
Absolutely, I agree with Councillor Jackson. For the money against the service that you're going to be able to provide and keep us within the law, I think it's a little bit of a no-brainer at all. And I think it's absolutely vital that, you know, we have something like this to not only cover ourselves, but deliver a good service. And why pay somebody else for something we can do in-house and that we can cover ourselves for? So if there is no other discussion, I will allow anybody to discuss, but I propose we just go forth and go for the higher tier as needed.
Well, thank you. Councillor Jackson, you're seconding that.
Second that.
Right, thank you. All those in favour, would you please show your hand? Right, that's unanimous, thank you. And 8.2 is to consider entering a contract for a 660 litre general waste bin with a fortnightly collection. This is on pages 12 to pages 15 in your agenda pack. Sandra, do you want to have a talk about this?
Can I pass this one to Alicia, because she's actually written the report on this one, please?
Okay, right, thank you. Alicia.
Yeah, thank you. Again, this was considered at the last meeting. The report that comes to you is slightly different because at the last meeting, we were asking you to consider waste collection in conjunction with the East Northants Council contract for emptying the bins. This time, and having reflected upon it, we're basically saying we feel there is a need for a general waste collection anyway. So we're taking the East Northants Council element out of it, and that's dealt with actually towards the end of the report, just above cost details, where we've said, could we consider the East Northants Council separately at a later date? So the report, in essence, in the general detail, outlines the current routes that we've got for waste disposal. And I can go through those with you if you want me to, but they're in the report.
Yeah.
It's basically saying, actually, we think we need waste disposal for these, principally, the items that we've identified. So I don't know if anybody's got any queries about how we dispose of waste at the moment, but the proposal is for 660 litre, which is like those sort of standard wheelie bins that take about, I think it's about 10 big bags of black waste, and for emptying once a fortnight. And it would be just a 1-year contract to see how we get on with that, if you were minded to support it.
So if you paid for a once a fortnight contract, but say we need it emptying because we've had very good weather and the field's been left with a lot of litter, can we ask for an extra one, or is that more problematic?
I haven't specifically asked that question. I would imagine there would be an element of flexibility in that if we really wanted it. Yeah.
Yeah. And could we offset this cost by maybe, I mean, would this offset some of the things that we pay Steve Pell to do? Or is that?
Yes, it would do, because at the moment we ask him to go and collect some items of waste that have been dumped, or if we have a surplus of waste, and the only way that he can do it is to collect it and take it to a waste disposal site. And so there's his time charge and then obviously the disposal route as well. So I know there is a charge obviously for the collection, which you have to balance out against the cost of Steve Pell paying for disposal, but overall I think this is a cheaper way to do it. So obviously if we do it for a year, then we'll have a better idea at the end of the year how much we have used it and how much saving we have made.
Is this for any specific litter, Alicia, or is it for anything that we find that could go in it?
This is for any general waste that we generate as a council, or that we have to collect, that the park wardens might have to collect, that they can't deal with just in disposing in the normal litter bins, because sometimes they will litter pick and they will have a lot of waste, and they sort of distribute that around the bins in the parks and play areas. But in the summer months they can get very full, so we're left with this excess of picked litter waste.
Okay, Councillor Jackson.
We often find during the year that members of the public have done their usual fly tipping, small objects, sort of broken scooters and all sorts of things, that the park wardens pick up, bring back to the cemetery chapel, put them around the back, and they sit there for weeks on end. I've often said to Alicia, we need to become more professional, which is the whole reason why I would like to see this bin myself, because otherwise, in fact, there is an item that's behind the cemetery chapel at this moment in time. Obviously, somebody's had a dustbin that they've been using as an incinerator or something of that nature. The bottom has fallen out of it, and it's now been dumped, and it's now been obviously collected by our park wardens and taken to the back of the... It's those sort of things that can go into it. Otherwise, we've got to find a way of disposing of them.
Has anybody got any comments they'd like to make? In that case, sorry. Yes, Sandra.
I was just going to say, I mean, Councillor Jackson's quite right, because the trouble is when we get that sort of waste, we're there trying to build up enough to make it worth Steve Pell coming to get rid of it. So this way, at least if we've got a collection every couple of weeks, we can keep on top of it much more.
Which is why I was trying to clarify, could that go in this? Yeah. Okay. So, Councillor Jackson, is that a proposal that we actually...
I would propose that we actually adopt the policy of having the...
Thank you. Councillor Paul, are you seconding it?
Yeah, it was just to highlight your question earlier, Madam Mayor. It was you asked about if the frequency could be increased, if once every 2 weeks wasn't enough.
Yeah.
I've had one of these bins before, and the council, Kettering Borough Council, charged me about £80 plus VAT to do an additional clearance of the bin.
Okay.
All right.
So I've had that bin before.
Right. Thank you.
So so there may well be quite an excessive charge then if we ask for an additional collection outside of the fortnightly. The other thing I'll just point out with regard to the 3 quotes, they quote for there's a weight limit on the bin. So it's a 45 kilogram limit on the bin. And if you're over that when they collect, quotes A and C will implement a surplus charge. So quote A would implement 16 pence per kilo if it was overweight, and quote C would implement 21p. Quote B said that they wouldn't implement because it was just a 12-month contract, so they would kind of let it go and talk to us if there was a real issue with it. But I think on the whole, we wouldn't be too far off that 42 kilogram limit.
Right.
On that basis, would we be better off? Can I just point out to looking at quote B, because there's not a lot of difference in the price.
No.
Yeah, it's a bit of an unknown, isn't it? If we have a lot of heavy items, then we could potentially go over the 42, or we just have to be mindful of that when we're loading the bin and putting it out.
Right, Councillor Redding.
I was going to say, obviously, I think we've all, I know we haven't voted on it, I think we've all agreed that we ought to go this way. I would have suggested quote C to go with that on the basis that it's only a 12-month contract. And if at the end of 12 months, it's starting to, we're getting regular amounts over 45 kilos, then we might be able to go back to all 3 of these people, companies and find out, get a new contract in the future. We're not being tied in from what I can see there. I think it's a 12-month contract.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner.
It's one of these positions we're not going to know what it's going to save us and what is required until we do it. It's a very strange position, isn't it? I can see the need for it. I completely agree that it's the way way to go, but we're not going to know the best until we try it. I completely agree with the fact that we are paying Stephen Pell in order to get rid of waste that we could have been doing ourselves. We will probably accrue more if people are meeting in open spaces again rather than meeting inside. So that's something to be aware of going forward as well. And I completely agree with Councillor Redding there. So if that is a proposal, Councillor.
Councillor Jackson already got a proposal on the table. So Councillor Jackson, you proposed that we actually definitely hire a 660 litre general waste bin. Would you just add on to that, going with quote C?
Certainly, no problem. As far as I'm concerned, it's an exploration at this moment in time. We've got to find out how much waste we actually accrue roughly each year, and we'll work it from there.
Right, thank you.
We've got to start somewhere.
So do you want to reiterate your proposal, or?
Well, you can amend it to suit, yes, including.
Including, well,
I agree that we should actually implement the idea of having a 660 waste, and I will take on that we adopt item C for the actual costing.
Right, thank you. And Councillor Gardner, are you going to second that? Yes, okay. All those in favour, will you please show hands? Right, that's everybody, thank you. Right, item 9 on the agenda is economy of the town. To receive the council's vision and objectives relating to maintaining the vitality and vibrancy of businesses in Heigham Ferris, which ensures that Heigham Ferris continues to be economically healthy. This relates to the period April 2021 onwards, and it's on pages 16 and 17 in your agenda pack.
This item has been deferred from full council because at the moment we've got the town manager in post to the end of March, and at the moment with the in COVID, her role has been essential, I would say, in helping support the businesses. I mean, we're all having to dip in a bit and be involved in this. Part of the reason, as you see from the actual community plan, was to have this sort of role, and that was an action plan. So if come April 2021 we haven't got that person in role, we need to understand whether the council's vision and objectives are the same, and if they are or similar, we need to understand how we're going to resource that.
Okay. Has anybody got any comments they'd like to make about this? Councillor Jackson.
Until we get to that period in time, nobody knows what this country is going to be like. The way coronavirus is rebounding, we haven't a clue what's going to happen with industry, etc. So I think by April, we may have an awful lot of work on our hands, and we will have to be adopting lots of different policies. But it's a question of who knows? We don't know at this moment in time.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything they wish to say?
I mean, if the council wants to wait until that time, and we can obviously review it probably March time, and we can have a look at.
Councillor Gardner, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to say I wouldn't want to, I agree with reviewing it and having a look. I just wouldn't want to leave it too long so that we don't have somewhat of a gap between the town manager's role, re-COVID and everything that's been going on. And obviously through the town team, we know and understand how much that she's been helping the businesses with that, and her role has changed, as I think everybody's has. But I wouldn't want to wait until a new council came in either. I think this needs to be looked at, you know, perhaps before that time. So, you know, the town manager's role doesn't just drop off and then all of a sudden we have like a void.
Okay.
So I would perhaps start thinking about, you know, perhaps the beginning of March to have a look at this.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
I myself would have thought just after Christmas by that time, we may even know which way the whole world is tipping. So obviously we know that the town, we will need some form of rejuvenation, but we won't know what until, say, just after Christmas. I wouldn't like to leave it until our town leaves. I would say sort of January, sometime in January, we ought to be reappraising the whole situation.
Okay, thank you. Sandra, did you want to say something? I wasn't sure if you had your hand up on that.
I do agree with that, because perhaps at that time the working party will come up for their action plan for the next sort of perhaps 12 months. I mean, initially, I guess going into April, if we've got this work to do, I mean, I won't let it, to be fair, I won't let it slip. It may be we have to start, if we haven't got enough resources, we have to pay some staff overtime while we're reviewing how we're going to continue it going forward. But I think next year myself is going to be quite a tricky year.
Yeah. So can you just recap? We have the town support until the end of March, is it?
Yes.
Yes. Right.
Well, at the moment, I mean, if she gets another job, it may go earlier, but obviously we will have to try and resource that, because at the moment I think the businesses are really relying on us, and myself as well as Julie, we have 2 weekly meetings with the Economic Development Department at East Northants, and there's all sorts of initiatives coming out from government, and the thing is we want to be across them so we don't lose out on any of the possible funding streams that come forward. I mean, one idea we have got, and it'll go to the next meeting that I've seen another council do, is that they've surveyed the businesses about how they feel they're doing in COVID and what support they need going forward, and I think that will perhaps help us decide what we need to be doing.
Okay. Councillor Redding.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I mean, the question asked there is, should the council objectives change? I would have thought at the moment they don't need to change. They will need to change going into next year, or certainly at the time of the next council. So after May, I imagine they may well be changed quite dramatically depending on who gets elected. And I think I agree with Sandra that if the council officers continue speaking to the businesses, then we get some ideas and fed back to us, and possibly a survey of those, a very simple survey I would have thought might give us an indication of what they might be looking at, but even they probably don't know. I know you know, we've got a couple of business people here. I mean, have they got any idea what they're looking at for next year? And I suspect the answer is no, we're just clinging on by our fingernails until we get through to next year. So I think we're going to have to defer it, but I think we've also got to keep listening to see what we can do. And whether, of course, any extra money is going to come from anywhere else. When I say extra money, because it's all going to come out of our pockets anyway. So, you know, we're just cycling it around a bit. But I don't see any point at the moment in looking at this in great detail and changing the objectives completely. The objectives set there, I think, covering just about everything until we discover early next year exactly what's happening.
Thank you. Councillor Whiting.
Yeah, I'd agree with the idea of deferring it for now, but I think we should really start looking at it in January. I agree with Councillor Jackson. I think we've got to, well, as Councillor Redding said, listen to the businesses, work alongside of Julie, close idea of what we want to do, which direction we want to go. But I don't think we can afford to wait any longer than January. If Julie's here until the end of March, and as the town clerk says, if such a thing as she gets another job, she could well go before. So I think we need to look at it sooner rather than later.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jackson, you still wanted to come back?
Don't mind. The unemployment figures have shown a massive increase now. So by this sort of in Christmas time or just after Christmas, we don't know what the figures are going to be like then, but I don't suppose they're going to be better. I have a horrible feeling they'll be a lot worse. So we as a town council, have got to start looking to see if there is some funding, and we could even possibly try and find funding to replace Julie, or not necessarily replace, but carry on with her work. But we don't know until we can find out what the situation is just after Christmas.
Okay, thank you.
Find some funding and then keep on with her.
Right, Sandra.
The other thing that's going to come into effect next year, which I don't know how much impact will have on Higham, is Brexit.
Yeah.
Because I hear lots of that, because all the businesses that trade with abroad and also employ international staff have got lots of regulations they've got to comply with from January. So we might be involved in trying to keep them up to date with things to do with that as well.
Yeah. So the survey that you want to carry out, Sandra, would that be a survey maybe November, December time, so that that information is ready for January?
Yes, I think we perhaps, I'll talk to Councillor Gardner. We perhaps need to call a town team meeting soon. It was something I came across on one of my forums, and it was a simple survey, and I actually thought it was quite a good idea. I did share it with Councillor Gardner.
Councillor Gardner?
Yeah, no, completely. I think it's something that we need to look at within the town team, and we've got good business connections there. Put together a survey to go out in order to gauge the response, and also ask businesses what they would like from us, what help, what direction, engage it both ways. And I think that communication needs to start really as soon as November. So I'll be happy to try and get a town team meeting together as and when you can, Sandra.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, thank you. So have we got a proposal on the table? Yeah, Councillor Gardner.
Can I propose then that we go forward with the town team business survey, and that is to be done sometime in November, to have this to be put together to look at as soon as we can, straight after Christmas, as early into January as we can.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jackson, you seconded it.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. All those in favour, will you please show hands? All right, thank you. That's unanimous, Sandra. Thank you. Item 10, items to report. To report any item not included on the agenda, no decisions can be taken under this item. Has anybody got anything they wish to report to the committee? No. In that case, item 11 on the agenda is the date of the next meeting, which is the 15th of December. Ooh. Gosh.
Can we have virtual mince pies, please?
Well, actually, Councillor Whiting, when Councillor Gardner and I went to the AGM, we had a virtual bacon butty.
All right.
And a virtual cup of coffee. So, yeah, if Sandra and Alicia can come up with that, I'm sure we could. Okay, right, thank you very much for attending the meeting, and stay safe, everybody. I'll see you soon.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Good evening.
Thank you.